Sunday Paper Review
on Off the Ball. Yes, it is the Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball on this, the 5th of October 2025. Adrian with you today. Delighted to say that Sue Carty is a former AIL rugby player, referee, member of the World Rugby Council, World Rugby Board member, and has served as an IRFU committee member as well. So you're very welcome.
Thanks very much.
And alongside Sue, David Sharkey, who's worked with teams like La Rochelle, the Arsenal women's team, Rugby Australia, inter-county GA teams, Irish women's hockey. Both of you have unbelievably long CVs here, and much more as well around theming and storytelling. Former teacher, coach, and you're very welcome, David.
Thank you very much.
Sports most boring man, you described yourself outside, so we're going to try and challenge that over the next hour and a bit, and also totally untrue, but we will get into that over the next while. We'll give people a bit of a flavour of what's happening across the back pages to begin with, and we're going to start with the Irish Daily Mail, which has got Virgil van Dijk with his finger in the air. What's going on? Liverpool looking for answers after third defeat in a row for Slots men. Chelsea 2, Liverpool 1 the result at the Bridge yesterday. Amarim calls for more after a vital victory. Manchester United beating Sunderland yesterday. And Shane McGrath on an interesting topic that's covered across a lot of the papers today. GA Congress enthusiastically endorses F4C changes. They all went through with ease, apart from one in relation to the Hooter particularly. So get into that in a little bit. That's the Mail on Sunday. The Sunday Independent, bridge too far. Chelsea's late show condemns Liverpool to a third defeat in a row, and Munster boss hits out at Murray's book jibes. Flanagan denies coaching churn and defends signings. This was the one where Conor Murray in his book, and he spoke about it obviously in interviews afterwards. I don't want to misquote him, but you can get the gist of it there. Cian Tracy writing that the Munster CEO Ian Flanagan has launched a staunch defence of the province following Conor Murray's stinging criticism of player recruitment. Flanagan says, it's not about having the biggest names in the world. Don't get me wrong, we have had signed some very big names as well, but in my time here. But it's about, are they the right fit for us? Will they add value? I think I can wholeheartedly endorse our process about incoming transfers over the last number of years in terms of the players who've come in. I can't really speak about players before my time. There is always that sort of tension, is that the right word? I suppose it is. Particularly with players, and maybe, you know, they want the best terms and conditions for themselves, and they want, you know, the big names coming in around, and then the ability to make that happen obviously is Ian Flanagan's job there, but just an interesting one to touch on. Andy Farrell, sticking with the rugby theme, is the main photograph on the front page of the Sunday Times sports section today. The truth about Owen, so it's a segment inside from his upcoming autobiography. I tried to pick him in the original Lion squad. He cried and said no. And then also Colleen and I were still at school when we found out she was pregnant. Plus how Katie Taylor inspired us to victory in the crucial second Lions test. It's the ideal morning, I must say. David, have you in? Discuss that. Estevao condemns Liverpool to third loss in a row. A really emotional end to that game for him. Yesterday, Estevao, Brazilian 18, the late bridge hero, as Reds lose 3 in a row. Amarin praises adult win. Thought that was an interesting comment, all right, afterwards. The Mur goes with simply the Est. Brazilian's late winner leaves cop and shock as Slot says of third straight loss, we must work harder. That's the Mur and the Sun. And then the People is also on the same sort of theme. Take a vow, Samba Kids stun Slot stumbling champions. And Real eye up £130 million raid for Rodri. So that's what's happening across the back pages today, and we'll get into some of it now. I think the Ryder Cup might be the place to start because it's covered in a lot of the papers today. Obviously, a lot of consideration after a fairly rowdy. I'm not going to lie, I watched a lot of the Ryder Cup. I was at Brentford, Manchester United last Saturday afternoon, and then I was going to, this sounds like a really rock and roll lifestyle, which is very much not what happens around here. I was going to Oasis in Wembley on Sunday night, and so I thought, oh, isn't the Ryder Cup, it's just the tournament keeps on giving because it's over before Sunday's even required. Imagine my surprise coming out of Oasis on Sunday evening when it had emerged. But yeah, a few interesting pieces today. Tommy Conlon in the Sindo says Lowry lifts an entire continent to new high. When push came to shove, Clara's finest found a way to channel inner bouncer. Yeah, that kind of a bouncer in international display. It's kind of a node to Shane Lowry and Rory McIlroy, and very much sure on the McIlroy side, like this guy that we have who's a total superstar and how he manages to cope with that on a day-to-day basis, not to mind when you have the baying masses roaring at you when the chips are down. Incredible, really, that he's one of us and he lives up the road, and I think we should take some time to tip the cap to one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect place to start today, given he is up the road and it's one of the ultimate big achievements. And it's lovely to hear him speak about it, how he talks about what it means, you know, the Ryder Cup to him, and to have that moment where, you know, his last putt made the difference is quite incredible. But I think also in the background of the experiences they had over those days, I mean, the atmosphere, what the crowd was like experiences in, that's, you know, golf is not known for, and particularly the Ryder Cup. And I think how they carried themselves and managed themselves over that period was quite impressive. And yeah, back to Ireland, maybe punching above our weight, celebrating ourselves in sports to the highest level, and here we are, Ryder Cup winning, our boy up the road doing the business of the day. It's remarkable. I was talking to somebody over the weekend who was saying they were at it on the Saturday, and they feel that the commentary about the rowdy American fans has been overplayed. That actually there was, you know, on a whole, there might have been 15 or 20 who were given it the large one, but there was 7,980 people who were very well behaved. There's a possibility that this thing it's an easy talking point and maybe overstated. It's true. And you're like everything else you often hear, you know, there's a few loud voices that can take over everything else. And, you know, I find it quite encouraging that actually is more the truth and the case. But nonetheless, it's a huge accomplishment, a huge achievement. And I think what you mentioned earlier, you know, to be on the world stage in that way, and, you know, to cope with everything, because it's spoken about in the papers in a few places today, you know, what it takes to be that sort of an icon and champion and carry it and still perform in the big moments. It's quite incredible.
There is that sense that and the comparison was made during the week about the crowd at the Ryder Cup mirroring that of social media. And I think, you know, what you said there about, you know, there being some sections, you know, if we're all to search the darker recesses of social media, we will find the worst. And maybe perhaps the issue wasn't so much the crowd or the numbers, but actually maybe that it wasn't handled or managed quickly enough. I know that's definitely something that lots of people, friends of mine again who were there, have kind of spoken about that, you know, that, look, they could have maybe been ejected, but there's that difficulty that if someone's paid, you know, how many hundreds of dollars, close to $1,000 in some cases, to be there, you know, can't they do what they want? Well, no, I don't think they can, and there needs to be that sense of decorum and sportsmanship that takes place there. So, has the reaction been a bit like po-faced, kind of, you know, golf is greater than everything else? There has been that tone about the coverage, I must say. I'm not saying that it's right what happened. Like, some of the stuff that was said was definitely over the edge. I think we can all agree with that. And certainly take your point in relation to how it was managed. That feels possibly to be the biggest thing, or like lack of managed. But equally, is there a little bit of a, you know, particularly with the Ryder Cup, like, I think we want to be careful that we don't end up with some sort of a, you know, a counter sort of movement when it comes to a dare of, you know, too much respect. The Ryder Cup is not supposed to be that. It's not supposed to be typical golf. You've got to have that kind of tension, and it's just making sure that that's managed, I suppose, and maybe it just wasn't managed so well last week in the US. But, you know, in the build-up to it, everyone was trying to build up the excitement, the tension, the crowd, making sure they get in their face, and then they got what they wanted to a certain extent. And yeah, maybe golf is being a little bit precious. You know, it wouldn't be the first time it's maybe being accused of that. So.
But I think it's, you know, that tension you want that support, all of that for sure. But there's also a line, you know, like, I think priding ourselves in respect, and, you know, there is a line that really, you know, you don't want to see crossed, like things like drinks being thrown at family members of participants. I mean, you don't want to see that anywhere. And I think, you know, that there's a certain, like, that needs to be maintained. And I think, you know, it's appropriate that that's expected in terms of delivery of a tournament. And I think it's, you know, that whole welfare experience, feeling safe in participation and being a spectator. And, you know, I've no doubt we come to a dare and they will do an outstanding job in delivering that. And, you know, there's lessons to be learned, I would say. Yeah. That one is such an obvious one for throwing somebody out when you fire a beer at somebody. Like, there's a lot of the other stuff that maybe lives a little bit in the grey area
of rowdiness. And then there was also like the Justin Thomas stuff where people had kind of come full circle from the, wasn't he great that he was sort of shushing the crowd, and then they went full circle with the, well, he was riling them up. That's fine, like that's the Ryder Cup. You're supposed to rile up your fans. That's the gig. Like, but you can't put responsibility on him, I don't think, for, you know, when fans did step over the line.
Well, he had his own job to do, which is go out there and perform. I mean, that's
difficult enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our guys were doing loads of that too. They were like Shane Lowry, chief
and you
amongst them.
want support behind you and all of that. I think, you know, when a player in any sport does that, they can't be accused of something else. And I think to your point, David, I think it's somebody else's role then on the day to manage the environment around them.
Yeah. There's a couple of other angles on the Ryder Cup that I want to get to. One of them is from Mark Tighe and Jimmy Wolfe in the Sunday Independent today, where they're talking about that the licence has been granted for the 2027 Ryder Cup at Dare Manor. I hadn't realised, I have to admit, that this was a wrinkle that apparently, and not just a formality, Dare Manor secured an event licence from Limerick City and County Council for the 27 Ryder Cup, a legal hurdle that clears the way for the golf event to be hosted in Ireland. There had been some concerns, it says locally, that an objection on environmental grounds could hold up the award of the licence, but no objections were made, and away we go.
I didn't realise that that was
in the balance. Yeah, I didn't have a clue. Yeah,
would have been a strange one, given like the fact that, you know,
they've marked the occasion as well.
The occasion has been marked.
Absolutely.
Social media posts have been produced. And you can't come back from that place. But just the other aspect of this article is the premium package. Regular tickets have yet to go on sale, and I did go and have a look, I must admit, and register my email address for the tickets on foot of this piece. But regular tickets have yet to go on sale, and prices have yet to be announced. But the organisers are selling premium packages. Captain's Club ticket, which includes a table in the restaurant of the same name, starts at €717.71 for the Wednesday practice session.
Look, for
so you're not even going to see the real thing.
For a man who goes to Oasis and Brentford every other weekend, I'm sure it'll be a drop in the ocean.
Just because of my introduction now, don't be holding out.
But no, this is maybe one of the... It's funny, the Ryder Cup seems to unite people beyond golf in a way that golf doesn't. And yet there are these angles to it about, you know, class and wealth and access and, you know, we talked about being po-faced maybe earlier, and all these customs and traditions that maybe put certain people off. So Shane Lowry is an incredible way to kind of pierce through that, because he is so personable, but yet he is laced in this world of, you know, of money, of wealth, of class, of influence. The end of the Tommy Conlon piece makes reference to, you know, the contrast of the Moet bottles of champagne they were drinking as opposed to the Clonmel champagne he was drinking on the 18th tee.
We went through some of the prices of the drinks. Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah.
It was like 120 grand from my basic maths. Yeah. Have we got some of them here?
Yeah.
This is the good stuff. This is the stuff we should be spending some time on here.
We weren't talking about the pint bottles of Bulmers. 120 bottles of Moet and Shannon at nearly £1,000 a bottle. 60 Moet rosé bottles with 60 or more Moet MCII, which according to the website, complex aromas of coffees, praline, pastries. There you go.
It sounds delicious.
Not quite to my palate.
Developed the citrus peel and kumquat, followed by minerality. Whatever the hell minerality is, I'm here for it, particularly at £1,000 a bottle.
Yeah.
Wow. There were bottles of Belvedere vodka at £2,000 a pop, 10 bottles of limited edition Hennessy, 250th anniversary cognac, and for each player a special Hennessy Richard Lunar New Year 2025 cognac at £7,000 a bottle.
That's the way to do it.
Good on them. Enjoy it. That's
I mean,
all you can say
me
to
going
that,
to
right?
Brentford and Oasis was
Yeah, fair enough.
all I'm saying. Is anybody in the Ryder Cup party who's been involved in any of that and wants to send any of that, the other angle here, Mark Gallagher in the Mail on Sunday, Lowry's Jump for Joy caps 3 days of pure TV gold. And there was one aspect of it particularly that I wanted to focus in on, which says, early enough in the piece, in an Irish context, there won't be a bigger sporting moment this year than what we witnessed on that 18th green. We've seen a lot already, but nothing will beat Lowry taking off and celebrating as if he was Seamus Darby scoring the most famous goal in GAA history.
Those leaps for joy were fairly impressive now, in fairness.
There won't be a bigger sporting moment, Irish sporting moment this year. Now, I'm here for a conversation about this. I think like Rory at the Masters.
Yeah, it's the one that stands out.
Rory at the Irish Open, 28-foot putt for eagle on the last hole. The roar, the cojones on him to have achieved, the playoff, not to mind what happened afterwards. Certainly Shane at the Ryder Cup. Like, I think we can forget about stuff like Dublin beating Limerick in the hurling this year. Was like, we're talking about an Irish sporting moment. Phenomenal. And the Tip comeback, I don't know. For me, I'm going Rory Masters. Maybe a dead heat between Rory Irish Open and Shane at the Ryder Cup, and maybe the other two then. But what do you think? Have I got the pulse of this wrong?
I think the fact that the event at the moment needs to have there needs to be something communal about it. It needs to be a big televised moment that brings the country together. And I think you get that with the All Ireland, depending on your preference or your county, as to how involved you are with it. But there is something about the Ryder Cup, and especially maybe about Lowry, that is just so personable that I understand where he's coming from with it. But the thing for me is that it was to retain the Ryder Cup. And I'm not, again, the context of which what was happening at the time, I think it did stem the tide. But imagine how we would look at that moment if it was 14-all, and with the injury to Hovland earlier, the withdrawal of the half point that was shared as a result of that. I think that would have changed the complexion of it. Having said that, I was all in on the moment, and I was leaping up out of the sofa a little bit like Shane at the time when he did it. But I don't know. I think it had all those elements of that kind of communality about everyone watching it at the one time. Having an opinion on it.
Must feel very hard done by in all of this, with Shane Lowry getting all the attention, and Hatton was the guy who actually went ahead, as you said, and won it.
It's so, when you talk about like the sporting moment of the year, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think everyone that was watching that moment, that was like the moment of the year, the moment of the decade, because you're all in it in that moment. But it's when you stand back and you look, well, how does that compare to the moment Sam Maguire's lift, or Lee McCarthy, or for McIlroy's Masters? And like, it's so hard to compare. It's like, well, actually, how do you choose one over another? And it's really difficult, because I think in the moment you can't argue how special that absolutely was. But yeah, I like that. I would struggle to number them. And being originally a GA head, it would take a lot of persuasion to take away from the All Ireland moments as well. So yeah, challenging one.
I wonder, for example, if we take the hurling this year, the fact that, I mean, it didn't look like this at half time, but the fact that Tipperary went on to really dominate Cork in the second half, there's so many moments that all sort of have a sense of being on the same level. And maybe that's something that takes away from it. So moment is one thing, performance is another.
I absolutely. But then you go for Rory's winning putt, you know. I don't know. But
and it's like when you tune into that moment, it's not even what it takes to put in, the putt. He would have done that millions of times in his life, but accomplishing it in that moment, given the expectation, given everything he worked through in the lead into accomplishing it, then it's like that's extraordinary. It just takes an extraordinary human being in that moment to accomplish that. It's like, how can you argue that moment we trump it by this moment in the Ryder Cup?
Maybe they are unfair comparisons in some ways, but then I also just think careers aren't defined, legacies aren't defined by the Ryder Cup. It's a footnote. I'm not saying it's insignificant, but you first of all go to, he achieved a career Grand Slam, and he won 2 or 3 Ryder Cups, and that one was amazing, but you're not leading out with that. And that's sort of where I come back to. And that's why I don't think that, I'm not sure I'm going to witness anything ever again like Rory at the Masters.
I'm with you on that one, 100%. That's number one for me, and probably because, like I was saying, in terms of what it took to get to that point.
The context.
It's exactly. It's not just the moment itself, and I think you can't just look at the moment in isolation, and that's what trumps it for me.
Yeah.
It is that journey again. And if you're invested with someone like Rory or with Shane, it gives that something that's that bit more powerful in and of itself. So Yeah.
And like I get it on the player side as well. I'm sure if there was any of them, I'm sure they all tuned into the Sunday paper review, but like if there was any of them listening, they'd be like, but you just don't get it. And I do understand the team dynamic and how it's so different and how you can get fired up for that in a way. And like whatever the quote was from Shane, like it means everything to me, and like it being echoed by a lot of other people. I totally understand that and don't challenge that at all. I'm sure that's exactly how it feels in that moment. And like Shane is such a Ryder Cup advocate anyway, like, you know, he does talk about it, been right up there for him, but like I don't
think he'd mind if we tipped Rory for the moment above it, though. I think he'd be okay with that.
It's funny again. I think was it the Friday or the Saturday where McIlroy credited Lowry with the point that they had earned, because he felt that he carried me in that.
Yeah,
and it's funny, like golf, the Ryder Cup is so interesting because it's the triumph of team over talent. Like the US have 7 of the top 10 golfers in the world. All on their 12-man team, and yet they couldn't get the job done because Europe have something that they buy into, a sense of identity, a story. And there's arguments to say that is Lowry, and maybe look, his record doesn't quite maybe match up to this, but is he moving into that Poulter kind of role of I know there's a few people missed the Ryder Cup, you know, but that's sort of embodying that kind of that team spirit and that cohesion. You know, you see him afterwards in the shorts and the shirts, the EU flag, you know, draped on him. So you know, he's so up for it. You know, it gets you know the crowd up for it too.
Just when you talk about the theming of it and the storytelling, that's a big part of your work, and you can feel free to give us the elevator pitch as to what that's all about. Just for anybody, you've been on with us before, but for anybody who's not familiar with that, but like the Paul McGinley piece, he kind of changed the game in terms of that, didn't he, in relation to the Ryder Cup particularly? Yeah.
So theming again would be, for me, it can be using a story or a metaphor, a keyword of value that you're going to consistently drop throughout a week, a season, a block of time. And of course, across a Ryder Cup week, for example, is a perfect time in which to do that. Now, for me, people get theming wrong when they think it's just about the event. It's actually about the build-up to it. I think that's something that Luke Donald, and you know, you mentioned McGinley again previously, would have done. And it's sort of, you know, it kind of it can get mocked easily in the sense of, you know, McGinley with the goldfish, was it the blue? Now it can. Now if it should be mocked if that is all you're relying on. You're saying, cool, we've got the goldfish in the tank, lads, we should be good to go. But when it's actually blended in with a whole load of other ways to reinforce a core message or a sense of, you know, I think an effective theme can prime an athlete, and we'll touch on one later where it's trying to maybe a group of athletes or a team. It can frame a challenge as to what it is that we're looking to achieve, but it can connect a group to their past, to their present, to their future. And when that's done effectively, it's really powerful. And Luke Donald is someone who's done that really, really well. And if you look at they've talked about a theme, for example, and if you watch enough of their social media, you can pick up on what that is and what's been reinforced constantly. And because what you're hoping is that eventually it'll tip the scales in your favour.
What is it?
So they looked at this idea of 2 years ago in Rome. They touch on Sevi, for example, quite a bit, and they talk about, you know, the opportunity, this being your time. And again, that works quite well. I've had this conversation with should you share your theme with other groups? So should they be talking openly about it? The Irish women's team, for example, in the World Cup talked about the Green Wave, for example. That would be theirs. And I would maybe suggest one thing or the other, because the problem is that you look at, like we talked about McGinley, you talk about Arteta, for example, at Arsenal. He's someone who uses theming. He mightn't call it that, and it's openly derided and mocked. But it doesn't matter if you're in the group and you get it. No one else mocking you or laughing at you. It doesn't matter. But it leaves you open to that. So I've often said in some cases, you know, should you share what it is? This can be our thing, you know, that we know that we get, that means something to us, and no one else is part of that.
Yeah.
I love how the Green Wave has come about, and it's just that, because that came from within the team themselves, and it's something that they created, they built out, and it's become a, you know, like join the Green Wave, and it's become the campaign, it's become the story, it's become the movement. But how it originated is really special to your point, and it's the girls themselves. And it's like actually, and we had a really nice moment actually celebrating the pioneers of the of the women's game earlier this year as a part of the 150, and Sam Monaghan came along and she acknowledged the pioneers for starting the green wave. That's now, like gaining that momentum, that roar and all of that, and featured in the World Cup. So yeah, these teams, these movements, they make such a difference, and they galvanise people behind them, inspire them, and all of that. And I actually think there's a lot more that use teaming. They may not call it that or realise that that's actually what they're doing, but that's actually the heart, and brings a whole team together.
When you get it right, it really resonates, and people will speak so fondly of it, and they'll remember those. And there's a great moment there of Sam Monaghan connecting the past to the current. Like there's, I've done this with different groups in different languages, some more poorly than others in different languages. But
La Rochelle obviously was one of the more high-profile examples of.
Yeah, and that's all through French, and I'm learning bit by bit now into my 6th season with them, so I'm getting there. But like finding the right thing, like I always talk about teaming being two things I'll say about it is that it's the right messages by the right people at the right time. It can be so effective. So it can frame, it can connect, it can prime a group. It can really kind of connect a group to something that's powerful. And when you hit on something, be it a story, a word, or phrase, that means something to the group beyond it. Like there are groups that I've worked with in different guises that the stories we've used, be it Ayrton Senna, Ernest Shackleton, Katie Taylor, Alex Honnold doing free solo, like different stories, they now mean something different to that group, and it's special to them as a result. So the green wave now has taken on a significance.
Just last one. So when you're sitting down with O'Gara to come up with the theme for the year, is it like it's a combination of his needs and wants or ambitions for the year and your experience of here's a story that fits that?
Yeah, so another way to put it is that people try and sometimes where theming goes wrong, and we've kind of talked about people often will talk about the good examples that and I've seen poor examples where I had to tell people, I don't think you should do this. I think this is just going to distract from what it is you're trying to do. It's taking an old message or a message you're already trying to deliver in a new way. That's all it's trying to do. It's a novel way to do it because, Adrian, we spoke before about just how the grind of professional sport is that people spend a lot of time in meetings, watching presentation after presentation. A theme or something different is that it's a new way to present what is an old message. And that's all it is. You're layering something on top of it. So it has to come from Rog. It has to come from the group. What are they trying to achieve? Who's in the room? What are they like? And, season 6 was very different to season 1 because the team has changed. Therefore, we need to think of something that's going to strike a chord with this group. Because if it doesn't, then we're just telling stories or talking nonsense en français poorly, week on week.
One of them was Shackleton. You're probably not at liberty to say any of this stuff, are you?
Sorry,
was it Shackleton or
I've used Shackleton not with La Rochelle, but I've used Shackleton previously.
Wasn't there one of the explorers with La Rochelle one year? There was.
There's been a few trips up Everest.
Yeah,
shall we say?
Very good. Feel free as we chat to drop more examples in there. We'll move on because on the front page of the Sunday Times there's a very stern-looking Andy Farrell, The Truth About Me and Owen, screams the headline, and it's a tease to his upcoming autobiography inside and a few extracts from there within. Tearful Owen turned lines down. Here's the truth about me and my son. Andy Farrell recalls the shock of learning that he was to be a dad to the future England captain, age 16. I mean, I'm not sure he learned that he was going to be a dad to the future England captain.
You're quite inspired at the age of 16. But what was remarkable in that story, like to picture him being scared, like he really describes the experience of, his girlfriend at that age, and she's pregnant, and, just to picture big Andy Farrell, and he's there scared of, girlfriend's dad at 16 years old. What does the future look like? And it's if he knew then what he knew now, but in those moments he didn't, and he was an apprentice, and he was working through those quite scary moments.
There's a great line about we were meant to be studying for our GCSEs while I was also edging towards my senior debut for Wigan. And on top of that, at 16. Now, having taught in the UK for a number of years, there's plenty of 16-year-olds who don't care at all about their GCSEs, let alone trying to do that alongside, becoming a professional sports person and and having a pregnancy unexpectedly.
Colleen and I were at my house when the phone rang, and it was Colleen's dad, Kieran O'Loughlin, former Wigan Rugby League player, just to make matters.
Yeah, I did find that. I was like,
Even scarier.
Okay.
He wants to speak to you, I said, and passed her the phone. Moments later, her face dropped, and she kept asking, "Why, Dad?" When the conversation finished, she turned to me. "Dad wants me to come home immediately." But he wouldn't say why. We both knew something was up, so I decided to go with Colleen for support, and then the events unfolded.
Yeah, and he's 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out the door. It's like he's ready to. He's ready.
He does have a bit in that where he says, "I think maybe I should leave." I was thinking he was probably going, "I would like to leave."
Well, at 16, because like the character of Andy Farrell is now all about like leadership and this great sort of leader of teams, and at 16. You can easily retrofit I was this person when I was 16.
Yeah.
But
No,
hanging around on the doorstep was a brave thing to do.
And it also, I know you're speaking into that moment, he rings Owen, but it also captures the experience for Owen as a kid, and he goes playing in the club and like some of the abuse and challenges and everything, like
back to the Ryder Cup conversation. In a lot of ways,
absolutely,
and
it's like there's really no place for that in sport, and it's really challenging when it's there. Like you've this vision in reading the article of he's there in the car, he's got a call from Colleen going, "Get here quick," and there's all sorts of shouting going on to own the pitch, and you can just picture the man behind the wheel not getting there fast enough to protect his son from whatever viral is happening from the sidelines. So yeah, quite extraordinary moments of what it is you have to cope or deal with, and maybe you shouldn't. Obviously, you shouldn't have to as a sports person.
Rugby deals with the fan abuse stuff reasonably well, as in it's not really there as a culture. Is it something that comes up around the World Rugby Board table?
It's absolutely not there as a culture, and we're really lucky. I mean, it's seen and is a sport, like values respect at the heart of it. But what very much gets spoken about is that the game is growing, and that's really, really exciting. We see it in this country. We see it globally. Like there's over 130 member unions now part of World Rugby. So as the game grows, the challenge is educating people coming into the game that this is what's expected of you. So when you walk through the gates, this is how, this is the welcome you expect. This is how we interact. And it is a challenge as you do grow to protect that. And that certainly does get talked about. Like we, a new strategic plan just approved by council. And at the heart of that again are the values. So it's like how you continue to grow a game and maintain that level of respect. And yeah, it's challenging. It's not easy. And there's examples where it's been challenged around our country. But for sure, it's
online
really
is probably we had Wayne Barnes on at some point last year after I can't remember how he retired, or there was a book or there was something else. He was on for about a half an hour and he was chatting about various bits and pieces, and he's certainly not alone. The social media piece, particularly for referees.
Yeah, the social media piece is such a nightmare. And look, this gets spoken about over and over, like where you've something faceless and people don't need to put their name to it, and all sorts of things get said. And there's a lot of work now to support, and exactly, you're right, like particularly for referees and signifying all of that there to help and support them. But like it is challenging. Actually, I was reading one article here with Ollie Campbell, and Ollie is talking about his journey, and he used to read the papers, and his advice to the upcoming out halves is don't look at social media, don't engage. And it's challenging, and like as we can see, a whole lot of stuff is there, and people love to have an opinion, and it gets quite nasty, and particularly when it's targeted at people's families and all of that, it's particularly hard.
You make the point there about like the faceless nature of it, right? And like, I mean, I think if the social media companies were of a mind, like in one fell swoop, they could probably do away with an awful lot of this. Is there any lobbying that you do or can do at your level?
Oh, like there's a whole level of work there to address it and change it within like what is within, I suppose, remit to do. I mean, we in terms of like World Rugby, we can't tell certain companies, social media companies, what you can and can't do. But certainly in terms of that lobbying to make sure that people are taken care of, like player welfare, match official welfare comes first, and influence as far as possible what can be put in place to help make a difference. And what is under the control of like World Rugby, IRFU, is things like Signify and supporting what's in place to make sure that as far as possible people feel at least protected and supported, and where to turn if it does get particularly challenging. So all of that has been significantly improved, but the social media era, it's everyone's problem.
It is, right? But I'd say equally, like, it does need credible, large, global organisations to say, hang on a second, you know, because otherwise we all just sit in our hands and say it's not right. And like, we hear, as well as everybody else, engage with these platforms. We're currently broadcasting on one of them, and we all have a responsibility to do that. It just feels like that, you know, World Rugby, FIFA, UEFA, all of the major sporting organisations, particularly given the amount of traffic and eyeballs and advertising dollars that are spent on these platforms, would have an opportunity to say, hang on, you know, we're not here for this thing. And as I said, like, if they were of a mind to do it, you know, sign up with your passport, whatever it is, they could do it, click of fingers, I'm sure.
There's a fear of tampering with the engagement, or the algorithm, isn't there? That's the concern, is that, well, if we do too much of this, it'll limit what people can say, which is exactly what should be happening. Like, why would we give such free rein to them?
I suppose not limiting what they say, but putting some constraints on abuse specifically.
Yeah, and like, that's done, I think, as far as within the remit. I think if you could, you know, do more, absolutely, because it does have such a negative like impact, and at the same time, like you say, here we're on a social media outlet, what it brings, and like, particularly if you look at how women's sport has grown over the last number of years. We just had the Women's World Cup in England, like record-breaking final, 82,000 people in Twickenham, the place going bananas. Like, social media has been a huge part and a real contribution to that journey, that momentum that we've gained over the years. So how we manage, like, to maximise that and ensure we continue to build on that while not be so impacted, and particularly for individuals, like, my heart goes out to people that, you know, are targeted specifically and have to deal with them. And as far as possible, take Ollie Campbell's advice and stay off it. And like, it just feels like, again, one of those ones that's just, it's not complex. Like, it's not trying to solve the HSE here. It's like, this could be done if people were of a mind to. That feels maybe the most if it only was that straightforward, I suppose.
I know. A couple of other bits on the Andy Farrell book that we want to touch on. So parts that are serialised here, at least. Obviously, one of them around the call to Owen Farrell. There's some nice detail in it around, like, you know, I think everybody was wondering, would you like to have Andy in, Owen in, or is it like, how complex is it? And so good details there. He talks about, like, the coaches wanted him in. He had said to the Lions themselves, like, if I feel it's the right thing to bring him in, I am going to be bringing him in. And he did feel it was the right thing. He said it was a very hard phone call. When I asked Owen if he'd come, he broke down in tears. He said he didn't think it would be right for him, for the squad, or for me as the head coach. It was a tough thing to hear. I told him to think it through, take his time, and if he changed his mind, that he put him on the standby list to cover an injury. Like, that's leadership in itself, isn't it? Like, frustrating, I'm sure, from Dad's point of view, but from Owen's side, like, remarkable to go, listen, put yourself before me.
Yeah, again, it seems that Owen, the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree in that regard. And there is that kind of bond that he talks about. You know, he said when he was born, I became obsessed with my son, like all parents. You know, again, how their children are obviously a core part of their lives. And he talks about him growing up around Wigan, you know, from the age of 4, being at training, being at matches. He probably, you know, when Colleen was pregnant, he probably didn't think he'd have a future England Rugby Union captain. He probably had hopes it was going to be in his own sport. But yeah, that sort of, not that surprising that Owen Farrell, how he carries himself, how he acts, and how successful he's been.
It was really interesting, the detail, I must say, around that. And then the Katie Taylor piece, the inside story of how my team won the pivotal second test. Katie Taylor's message inspired the lads, and then Will Stewart had to wear boots 2 sizes too small. So, yeah, the Katie Taylor aspect of it, and the message comes across, and he's trying to wait to find the right moment. It's very much in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. So that idea, as I mentioned, right message, right people, right time is crucial. People would speak about maybe getting too hyped too soon to an event. So where do you want that emotional valve or release? When do you want to reinforce a message? And the clip that went around social media of the Katie Taylor video was an exceptional one. Now, being someone who analyses meetings and communications, which is, meetings especially why I'm called the most boring man in sport, is something that I'm studying, that I'm particularly interested in. But choosing when to do that is absolutely crucial. So the social media stuff they put up online that I'll analyse, media teams will edit out the silences, but he talks about the reflection after that. I reckon, he's a masterful use of silence, I can imagine, in the sense that he let that maybe linger for a little bit longer. If you watch the clip, it's for a second or two, you're thinking, God, let it kind of breathe a bit more. But, having an external voice like that, or having a clip or something like that, can be really effective at the right time. But he talks about, for example, planning isn't everything. You need to have an ability at the moment to feel what needs to happen. That's where the best coaches exist. They have that emotional intelligence to go, there's too much happening now. We need to look at, maybe we'll swap that around. Now, planning enables you to do that. You can't just go in off the cuff and see what happens. But, Gary Keegan and Andy Farrell are very welcome for the Katie Taylor team, which I used with Westmeath a few years ago, of course, the Talton Cup. So they're happy to have it.
Is that what it was, right? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. So we used. It was funny after the Serrano, the most recent Serrano fight. It was Jack Cooney sent me a message to say, "Did you see Katie was fighting?" So there's another good example of someone who was involved. And Katie Taylor isn't just Katie Taylor. She also reminds him of the experience that the lads had with Westmeath. Yeah, we packaged. What was a core idea around, and it was Desi Dolan who said in the first instance, was to talk about the idea of courage, because it was the idea of people from Westmeath don't dream of lifting the All Ireland or winning big things or doing great things. Why? And it was this idea of courage. So we looked at Katie Taylor's story as being there she was training to be an Olympic champion in a sport that didn't exist for her. And she's the one who changed that. These sort of the courage to dream, to kind of to persevere, to push through it. Or another phrase which we use, I think it's from a Shackleton line, which is find a path or make one. And she was a classic case of that kind of trailblazing. So I was really interested in how the Lions used the line that she said. And after the second test, Jack Conan quotes her, saying, "Be prepared to win by will," which is what they had to do in the end. And when it happens like that, when when Will Stewart or any of the Scottish or the Welsh guys, Jack Morgan, whatever, in years to come, they may have never known anything about Katie Taylor, but in years to come, when they see clips of her, they'll be reminded of the Lions in the second test. And it can have that power to really, as I said, resonate.
If you can't win by skill, win by will.
Yeah.
What a line.
Yeah, what an amazing message. Yeah.
What can you do for a team that have lost 15 games by a point in every league and championship game back at Westmeath for the year ahead? What story are you like?
We shall see.
Oh, God. Right, that's that. That's definitely worth checking out. I am really looking forward, I must say.
But I have to say, I also loved the story of the boots, like a professional player there, on the most important day, arguably, of his career, and he was saying his boots are going to last the whole season.
Yeah.
And didn't want to change and has to squeeze into boots two sizes smaller. It's just brilliant.
There was a few things that caught my attention on that. One was that he clearly had some sort of attachment to the boots lasting the whole season, or he's particularly frugal, possibly, and didn't want to get a new pair of boots. I'm sure as a professional athlete he might be able to find other ways in which to buy boots. And the second thing was that Tyg Furlong, size 10. I couldn't believe that. I couldn't get my head around that. I was like, he's a very big man, size 10. Tipping over.
16th of October, by the way, is the release date for that book. I'm sure there'll be plenty more.
That'll be well interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people would like insights into someone who's, again, really endeared himself to the Irish people and been hugely successful.
No, absolutely. Quite remarkable to come on the back of Lions Tour and be ready with the book, and off we go.
Must have been ferreting away in the background.
Good for him. Good for him, for sure.
Yeah, busy man. There's a Ross Byrne piece as well. We might come back to in a little bit, David. I know you've been looking at that, but just a few other bits and pieces that we want to get to. GA to begin with. Dermot Crowe in the Sunday Independent today. Obviously, there's been a lot of writing over the last 24 hours about events at Croke Park and Congress and the passing of all the FRC rules. But Dermot Crowe's in the Sunday Independent, and about Charlotte Byrne's comments on the club games being streamed, and how he feels that counties aren't necessarily getting value for money, that, you know, the local arrangements go against GA existing deals with the likes of TG Carr, obviously, who have rights to broadcast those games. And as Charlotte Byrne says, like, they've no value either given for GA sponsors. So they've set up the GA's Broadcast Advisory Group, and they're going to give them some guidance on how to tackle all of this. I don't know if either of you have an opinion on it, but it felt to me as if, sort of going through it, Charlotte Burns was certainly been quoting a cranky figure if the quote's written to go by in relation to what counties are doing locally, and maybe not getting the best deals, and definitely not delivering the best value for the GA sponsors. But also, like, that the GA have been caught on their heels here. Like, the horse is bolted and they're giving out about the fact that counties have gone to sell their rights elsewhere. Like, you know, the horse has left the stable, or whatever analogy you want to go with, and it might be a little bit late to get it back. And maybe that the crankiness should be a little bit sort of inward looking too, that, you know, they could have got ahead of this a few years ago. There's
possibly a frustration, yeah, that maybe they didn't get on top of it. But the difficulty with the GAA is that it is both, it is national and also local. It is parish by parish, and, you know, finding something that aligns across all of those levels is particularly challenging. And I think this is another good example of that, where county boards are making decisions that are good for them in the possibly maybe in the short term, but also, yeah, like, why shouldn't they? Like, why shouldn't they maybe do that? So maybe it is a bit of sour grapes, I don't know, that they haven't got ahead of it, as you say.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see if they can put the toothpaste back in the tube, as Eddie O'Sullivan might say. FRC rules all passed, 62 votes in 42 minutes. The stop clock and the hooter got some pushback, but eventually got passed in the end. They should pass a motion to introduce a new hooter for Croke Park. I don't know if you've experienced this in person, but holy Jesus, it would, like, shake the bones
out of it. You're saying,
something different. I know you need to make people alert to the fact that the time is up, but, you know, any heart issues, you know, need not apply.
I think, in fairness to them, you know, that moment yesterday deserves celebration. I mean, what a process they've put in place, and it's been a hugely exciting championship. And like lots of people who were, you know, oh my gosh, what's happening with football? It's not the same. I mean, it's come to life, and it's been really remarkable. And I suppose particularly when I look at what they put in place, the process they put in place, how they engaged all stakeholders in it, players embraced it, referees embraced it. There was a lot of changes very quickly. People had very little time to get their heads around it, but those that were leading the way had a picture of what it would look like, and as it got delivered, that was getting fulfilled on. People loved it. Like, the attendances at matches increased throughout the season, and here we are now celebrating that new future. For, in fairness, the GA would have been criticised before that it takes so much to bring in the most basic of a rule change anywhere. And here they are now, having done quite a radical piece of work. And I have to say, alongside, you know, the whole integration conversations that are happening right now, it gives you a real sense of purpose and what our Gaelic Games Association can really look like going forward. So, very exciting time for GA, I would say, in the country.
Sue, it's something that you might be conscious of, but that's a really good example of when something is communicated effectively, when it's thought through of all the stakeholders, who's it going to affect, when it's organised effectively, and it's not rushed through, it's not, you know, half-arsed or whatever, just what you can achieve with that. And, like, integration is another big challenge, and will it get the same impetus and drive and energy behind it that this has? Because I think what the FRC have achieved is remarkable. And therefore, it, as you say, it signals that why can't other challenges, bigger, greater challenges be not overcome in the same way?
Yeah, I think it highlights that it's possible.
Yeah.
So, you know, the first piece for me is that leadership from the top, going, actually, do you know what? We're at this point in time. We need to look at this, and this is how we're going to approach it. So telling the story, and engaging, well, who are the key people that need to understand this? Bring them on board. They're part of the journey. They're part of the process. Their feedback is crucial. When we hear back from them, we're going to actually adapt what we're doing based on that. So I think people felt heard, and then they got to play, got to watch. It's like going, actually, this is making it better. So if you look at where they're at in the integration process, I think there's lots they can learn from this. Like, they're at the point now where, you know, everyone's around the table. It's like going, actually, what can integration look like? What does the other side of Gaelic games in the country is one organisation for all? But I think they've also demonstrated that actually they have a capacity now that they don't treat them all the same, which I think would have been one of the fears of the different sports coming together. So, you know, we have a certain thing that works within our sport, but actually all of that can be dealt with in this, I suppose, progressive way of leadership now within the GAA, and I think that gives great confidence going forward.
Yeah, and I think our own Tommy Rooney did a couple of pieces with James Horn, who was on it, and Colm Collins, who was on it, and they were talking about like the success of the whole thing ultimately being the death of the FRC, but there would be some sort of a legacy committee there that they wouldn't need to like wait for 20 years and then have a raft of changes in one go, so like that there is that kind of smart thinking.
And that's the crucial thing, that it does, there's a lesson and something put in place in terms of the governance and the running of the game within the organisation that keeps it agile. It's like, how can it continue to be agile going forward? Now, not reactive, it's a very different thing. But agile is hugely important.
Don't wait for it to break down before you can, you know, make tweaks and improve it. Why not? Yeah.
Well, Jim Gavin's chances of being on that ongoing committee might be they might be better today than they were a couple of weeks ago, according to the polls on the Sunday Independent today. He might not be taking up residency in the Phoenix Park.
I'll leave that to the political experts.
Polls are polls. We'll see what happens after that. Burbuck on YouTube says, are we still pretending the Ryder Cup matters? Like, I hear where you're coming from. I'm not sure I'd be out that far, but and Ian Takana says, who cares what's written online? It's like graffiti on a toilet door. It's rubbish. But yeah, I look at it.
Easy to say if it's not. That toilet door isn't being shoved in your face all the time.
Correct.
Or people referring to that toilet door. Yeah.
We kind of touched on something there that kind of leads naturally into obviously budget is upcoming as well in the next couple of days, and so there's some writing on that across the sports pages today, including Shane McGrath in the Mail on Sunday. Earned the right, he says, there are far worthier claims for state funding than the GPA's. He writes, he said their demand for near doubling. Sorry, it was your point, Sue, about the, like, you know, the one association aspect of things, and like, you know, that it comes at a cost, I suppose. But Shane has taken on the idea here. The GPA's demand for a near doubling of the government grant scheme is one of the sporting wish lists most easily ignored, he says. Giving inter-county players bigger grants to cope with the demands placed upon them merely validates a culture that is careering out of control, because if players are under the strains the GPA says they are, the problem isn't insufficient funding, but the game that makes those unreasonable demands of them in the first place. That's what should change, not what the taxpayers expected to hand over. Which is, when you read it, you're like, oh, that does make sense. Like, money isn't necessarily the solution here. It's the demand on players.
It's possibly the sense that which is quicker to do. And maybe the sense is that, oh, well, this will fix it if you give them a grant or if there's some sort of stipend for players. But, you know, there's merit in that argument, in the sense that actually, what do we want the GAA to be? How do we want it to affect the lives of its participants, of its members? What sort of demands do we want to place on everyone's time? Players, backroom staff, inter-county managers. And I know that's a debate that's happening everywhere, but, you know, those conversations should be happening. And, you know, to what we maybe just spoke about, that these things should be considered. And I'm sure they are. But, yeah, there's possible merit in the sense of, you know, what should happen, or what sort of effect this has, should it go through.
Yeah, like, there's a race to the bottom, really, I think everybody would accept, with the demands on players now.
There's huge demand. I think we can all have absolute, that's it. Like, there is a huge demand on players for sure. And what tweaked my interest here, linked with that, is Jarlath Burns had three priorities coming into office. And the third one is the amateur status. So I'm really curious to see what comes of working through that. Like, what does that picture look like in terms of looking at that, addressing it for the organisation going forward, which I'm sure has to include, you know, how players get taken care of, looked after in its broadest sense. I mean, the debate around, you know, is the amateur status right? Is it more professional? When in reality, you look, I mean, professionalising Gaelic games in Ireland, just not sustainable is where, you know, where it lands. But at the same time, those that give so much absolutely, you know, deserve to be taken care of in the right way. So I'm very curious to see where that work that Jarlath Burns is speaking to now of one of the next priorities he's going to roll out, what's going to open up out of that.
Yeah, there's a tension really between the two of those things.
Yeah.
Like if we're saying that they've been overworked and, you know, trying to find the balance, but then we're saying, well, we're going to give them some extra money to make that okay, then those two things are not aligned.
Where does that debate land is, will be really interesting to see where that goes.
And it should, you know, it's a debate that should be had.
Yeah.
You know, it should be part of that. And, you know, I think Jarlath Burns, to his credit, is someone who has flagged that that's something that he wants to discuss and challenge and take on.
Yeah. And good that Che McGrath, I think, asks the question today as well. Fair play. Lots of soccer stuff. Obviously, we're heading into International Week, and everybody's so excited about the upcoming Republic of Ireland matches that we can't get enough of that. I'm not 100% sure that's true, but there is some. See, Mark Gallagher's piece in the Mail talks about the retirement of Jeff Hendrick. Obviously, the week ahead, Portugal upcoming, and our midfield issues. I don't know if any of you are versed enough in Ireland's midfield issues to comment on this, but the possibility that Nathan Collins steps up, and it's been something that I think Finney Perth possibly on this show first mooted a number of months ago with getting Nathan Collins a little bit further up the pitch. But yeah, I don't know. There's a feeling with the whole thing that Heimer Helgrimsson is just seeing out his like, listen, I don't know. We go out and we beat Portugal and we do all these other things that feel it's so unlikely at the minute.
Look,
obviously, we'll be having a different conversation.
We'd be delighted to be surprised. The other thing that did jump out at me around that is his reach to bring that leadership back in. We've spoken about leadership in different contexts, but bringing back in some of the you know, your Coleman and that's a missing from the squad. Like he speaks about the younger players maybe not having gone through some of the life stories we see from others where that hard graft and that just get stuck in. Maybe lessons from Katie Taylor we spoke about earlier, that maybe those younger players he's experiencing don't quite have that. So I thought it was interesting that he's reaching out to that the older players back in to make that difference. Yeah,
we will see. I have said on this show not that long ago how positive I always get. Positivity overtakes me in the week of Republic of Ireland internationals. I think this week may challenge that.
Maybe we're just too far out from the game. Maybe if we give you a few days.
Give me a few days.
Yeah,
about an hour from kickoff, I'll be telling you anything you want to hear. That's that. We'll get into a few more pieces here, and I'll throw it open to you after this, but I just wanted to mention a piece with Bryony Frost, the jockey, in the Sunday Times today. David Walsh, brilliant piece of writing. It took me to dark places, but I didn't regret speaking out at all. It's my story. Bryony Frost loving her new life in France after a stellar career stalled following a high-profile harassment case. And Bryony Frost, like, is such a decorated jockey. Second female jockey to win a Grade 1 race over obstacles. Ryanair chase at Cheltenham 2019, the King George's VI chase at Kempton in 2020. Remains the only female jockey to have won the King George. Like, her list of achievements is incredible, really. And to consider now that she feels no longer able to ply her trade in her native England, she's had to move to France. She made a formal complaint against her fellow rider Robbie Dunn at the time. She'd accused him of bullying and harassing behaviour at their workplace, and 15 months after that, in December 21, a disciplinary panel found in Frost's favour. Dunn was suspended for 18 months, reduced to 10 on appeal, and during the disciplinary hearing it became apparent that some male jockeys didn't believe Dunn had done much wrong, and she felt very much ostracised by all of this, and others in racing didn't like the public washing of Dirty Lynn. Not everyone was on Frost's side, and so she felt that she needed to go further afield. It's such an interesting story. She comes across very well in the piece, I must say. A question towards the end that I was curious as I read through the piece about how life is for her in France now. David Walsh says, has she found the French weighing room to be a kinder place than the UK weighing room was 5 or 6 years ago? And she says, in the weighing room, you know, we're competitors. It's not been straightforward because my French is hopeless, but there's always politeness. Everyone says hello. Absolutely no friction. but you can't steer away from the fact that we're not in a playground. For us, it's an individual sport, jockey versus jockey. It's also a team sport with your trainer, your owner, your horses. But in that way, you're an individual and everyone else is your rival. And then David Walsh says, I wonder if she feels scarred for what she's been through. For sure. I mean, it's part of my life. It now follows me. It's part of my story. But would I change it? If it's a choice between speaking or staying quiet, it's 100% speaking. I didn't do it for me. I did it because I saw the effects that it was having on people that couldn't or didn't want to put their voice, want to put a voice to what they were feeling. Looking back now, I understand why they were clever not to. It's a really good read. It's exactly, I think, what kind of journalism should be about, to challenge norms and reflect on a situation that I think probably had disappeared off the headlines for a while. But again, not sure if you have anything to say on it, but it was certainly a piece that I would like to direct people towards. David Walsh in the Sunday Times today. Otherwise, we can move on. What other pieces have been catching your interest today? I know there's a Fiona Murtagh piece that people had mentioned.
Yeah, that piece, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but that was, it was just great to kind of hear her story of her success, obviously last weekend, but just kind of where she's come, especially since Paris. So herself and IRFU were a double, and again, I think the line here that she talks about, which I think is something that maybe we miss sometimes, is the guilt that she feels that she's continuing on, and IRFU, her career ended with Paris, for example.
Where they finished sixth in the semis.
Yeah, and they'd had success in Tokyo, and so she says, I can talk about Paris now, but it took me so long to get to that point. I needed a lot of support from my family and friends to get to that, and from Africa. The two of us had each other when we needed each other most. I always felt it was disappointing I could not give her the end her rowing career that I felt she completely deserved, because she's an incredible athlete. And that for me, again, that sense of, and again, the gas thing is that I'm sure IRFU was the first person who was delighted to see, you know, her being successful in Shanghai last week, with that. But again, just that was something that stood out to me, that sense of that guilt. But there was another one here about how she said nothing really in place after Paris. So in an Olympic cycle, with any sort of high performance sports, they'll always talk about that low that people will feel afterwards. So she talks here, for example, you dedicate so much time to so much focus on one particular thing that you've set up your life for it 4 years in advance of it. And then to just suddenly end on a random Wednesday morning, it does feel like a cliff edge that you've fallen off, especially if you haven't made any plans for after. And I think there can be such a big build-up, especially if you're part of an organisation or a team, to kind of this gradual build-up to sort of, you know, to excel, to prime. And there needs to be an off-ramp as well. There needs to be a down-ramp. And it was kind of a bit jarring to hear that's how she felt. Now, luckily, she was back in a boat. She wasn't sure again what she was going to do, but she's been able to go on to have this success. But those two things, were things that stood out to me on it.
Yeah, same. It's quite remarkable. Like, it's a familiar story in lots of ways, in terms of that moment where, you know, you've big expectation, you put everything into it. You're there at the Olympic Games in Paris, and it just doesn't go according to plan, and it's absolute devastation. And, you know, like, I was struck by not having a plan from there, because, you know, you're like that, you expect an athlete, well, after this it's the next Olympic Games or whatever. But the other thing that I find really remarkable about her is she completely changes to go from that pair into single. Yeah. I mean,
well, she actually went from a 4 to a 2 to a scull.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think we can comprehend what that takes. And the difference being part of that culture, that club, that within that someone says, actually, there's something else here for you. I see something here for you. And then, like, the way she has taken it on and now celebrates that achievement, and now she's looking to LA 28. And to be honest, you read that article and you're going, you know what? I'm backing the Galway girl. Like, no kidding. Right. It's really inspiring, and it is honouring Africa. It's like, and it does capture the best athletes in the world. Don't always get that moment, and like, while we know that, when you read it in a piece who captures it in that way about her partner, it's really touching, and it just shows they put everything on the line, and they have no idea if they're actually going to make it or not.
Yeah, that terrible kind of balance and that kind of, well, the crucible of kind of high performance sport that you kind of go into.
And that's what you need. Like you need the edge of, is it going to work?
Yeah.
Is it going to get there?
Yeah.
But you put everything into it. Like you have to believe. You have to believe it will.
Yeah.
I think it also. Sorry, you mentioned again Dominic Casey, who again, is there's a incredible coach that we have, on these shores, and what he was like, his insight to be able to back him. We looked at Andy Farrell earlier, and maybe some other coaches. Again, that capacity to have a quiet word and to back you, to go, look, I know you can't see this, but I see it. You can do this, and I know you're picking yourself off the floor, your disappointment, your guilt from, Paris or whatnot, but to kind of back her and to see it. As you said, I was looking at the end of that going, I can't wait to watch her in LA.
Yeah, for sure.
Moy Cullen specifically, and it's a small place on the edge of Connemara that has produced some of the most amazing sports people, even over the last few years. Sean Kelly and his brother, Galway footballers, Julianne Russell, umpteen Olympians. I don't know what's in the Connemara water out there, but it's
and she
good
rocks
stuff.
up just because her twin brother was good at it.
Yeah.
She didn't
that's
see
right.
herself
Yeah.
like that's. So any kid out there that thinks they're not sporty, don't jump to conclusions too quickly.
Yeah.
And that's how she started.
Rowing is such a unique sport in that sense that people who, because there can be a sense of sport is what is on TV all of the time, and it's what people talk about, and it's the jerseys that people wear, but sport isn't that. There's lots of different variations, and I would have worked across different sports, and I would have worked in rowing as well. Did some work with British rowing a few years ago, and previously when I was teaching, I was working in a school that was mad into it, and the people there, again, they didn't find their niche on a sports field or with a ball, but by God. And the other thing I couldn't, again, I was trying to explain this to maybe some of the rugby teams that I was coaching at the time or I was working with, saying, I don't think you understand the commitment and the discipline that they have, and how much they're willing to put themselves through the mill to do that. So
As somebody who did rowing badly for a year, I get I had a front row seat about other people who were willing to put in the. Yeah.
It's not always about being good at it, Adrian.
Well, certainly not in my
Taking
case.
part.
That's me in a nutshell. I just love the last line on it. It's by the way, it's Shea McGrath in the Mail on Sunday. That's where you can check that piece out. It's a super piece. Just the context that she had post winning and then not winning, and the disappointment around Africa and all that. I do this because I love it, and then I'm good at it. Good line.
It's funny how much that is. That was the kind of core thing she had to go back to. So there's this kind of myth that success comes from motivation, but motivation comes from success. You need to have some sense of actually, I'm okay with this. And sometimes we forget that actually I have to get all psyched up and get ready, and then I'll be able to do it. It's like, actually, if you know that you're onto something here, you pull on that thread as to where it brings you.
Take the action first, and it can cause that momentum, that motivation going forward, for sure.
Eamon Sweeney in the Hold the Back Page piece in the Sunday Independent goes very much against the grain of a lot of conversation over the last week. Lost in translation is the headline. A photograph of an NFL bedecked Croke Park, and obviously it's for London shores today, but the NFL game at Croke Park last Sunday was a magnificent occasion, he writes, from which we can learn nothing. The Pittsburgh Steelers Minnesota Vikings game didn't offer a blueprint for rebooting the All-Ireland final experience. Instead, it offered a glimpse of a world entirely unlike our own. And on he goes. You can get the gist of things, in these quarters and elsewhere. We've spent the week going, oh, look what we could do if we put our mind to it around, particularly in a GAA context. But Eamon Sweeney's not having it. What do you think?
It's that sense that I think there is maybe a desire sometimes to turn everything into something else. So I think I kind of understand bits of that, but on the other hand, there's certain things. It doesn't have to be exactly like what happened.
It couldn't be.
Yeah, well, why would it? And I think it's also important to note that the NFL that happened in Ireland last week was an incredibly unique event that might come back again on an annual basis. But if it's there every week, we might begin to tire of that, and we mightn't quite get the traffic and the footfall through the. Throughout the streets in Dublin. So I kind of understand again where he's coming from in that. Having said that, there are certain aspects that you could consider at least. And again, not to adopt and to take wholesale, other sports and to turn something into something else. Oh, well, they do this in F1 or they do this in, not everything has to be that. Like we like to, people in marketing like to kind of say like, oh, this is just like that. It's like, it doesn't have to be, and sport should be unique, especially in this country.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think the first thing to be celebrated, like, look what happened last week, and like the excitement, like, absolutely incredible. And I love that it triggers these conversations. Well, actually, like, what are we doing with ours? What could it look like? And he does, in fairness, in the article, capture that the sport is very different. So given the sport that it is, and you have highlight moments and you have so many moments of downtime and all of that, like, the whole engagement of fandom is really different. But what I do think it brings to the fore is entertainment and sport is much closer now than ever it was. Where before, you know, you rock up to whatever match or event, there's the expectation is different from some, and equally you have your traditionalists that I'm going to a match and I just want a match. Don't give me the razzmatazz with it.
Yeah.
So it brings a real debate
my
around
point
actually
would be,
reaching that.
on Eamon's article would be that you can still do that. But for everybody else who wants to go and have, you know, some version of an Irish tailgate party, or come and see a veterans match between the two counties, or like, you don't like, it's, where nobody's forcing you to go and do those things. You know, listen, like I made the point earlier, it's good that we have counter opinions, obviously, in our pieces today, and so I'm not.
Oh, and he's very strong on his, so that's
but yeah, that's that. Few interesting soccer bits. Mark Gallagher's piece with Mickey Walsh in the Mail on Sunday.
Yes.
It's like a name that you kind of rings a bell, and then you get into the nuts and bolts of it. English born in Chorley to an Irish dad, Mayo dad, not just an Irish dad, who had passed away before Mickey had a chance to even play for Ireland. But he turned 70, I think it was last year, and he was 50 years married, and his quadruplets, who were the first ever non-identical quadruplets born through IVF, had turned 40. So all these kind of landmarks, and, you know, he mentions the match of the day, goal of the season winner for Blackpool in 1970 something, which I look back on and was a class goal, particularly for the time where the ball was like dead weight. The pitch was pretty crap. But like Blackpool, Everton, QPR, Porto, and then he just continues to live in Portugal for the rest of his life. Played under own hand, you know, recounts some of those sort of nearly were days, and maybe, you know, the referees weren't all they might have been. The one referee particularly wasn't everything he might have been. And Jack Charlton, and really interesting just story about somebody that would have probably existed in people's back of their consciousness somewhere. There's a couple of pieces with him actually across the papers today, but that was one that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, and it's a nice connection with the history, you know, the history of the game and some of the remarkable characters. Because, like, he would have been one of the, you know, that going off to Portugal to play football, like, his journey was so unique at the time. He would have been one of the first to do that, and others would have, you know, looked up to them.
At the time,
and I had no idea. Like, when I saw the quadruplets, like, I was like, oh my gosh, that as well. I did not know that part of it. I did not know that part of his story. And somewhere, like imagine 4 same like babies, and we go, and along with everything else that he continued to do as a family, is it's a really remarkable story. So great to get connected with that.
Yeah, really good piece, and definitely worth checking out. There's Paul Rowan in the Sunday Times saying that Keith Andrews had a pop back at Martin O'Neill. He makes a good point. Keith Andrews' cuts didn't call it out specifically, but the overall tone is Martin O'Neill is the chairman of the LMA, and he shouldn't be having a go at me every other week. It's not an unreasonable point, I have to say. Wasn't a thought that had struck me before. Like, he's supposed to be Keith Andrews' representative with the LMA, but then is out saying, some not great stuff about him. It was a good point.
Martin O'Neill continues to grind axes. It seems a bit strange, as I said. It seems a bit strange anyway, that he continues to take this line. He chooses to do so, but in his position, it seems all the stranger, to be honest.
Yeah, because it just seems like he's forgotten about the fact that's what that is. Point people towards the David Matthews article with Sinead Kassan in the Sunday Independent today as well. And I don't know if you guys have any other bits that you want to touch on.
Just you mentioned that Rory O'Connor piece in the Sindo about Ross Byrne, and again, someone who possibly maybe wasn't appreciated all of the time. Again, that he was in Ireland and was at Leinster. So just interesting to see again how he goes. And look, I hope he goes. I hope he goes really, really well. But it is interesting again some of his quotes about maybe what was happening at Leinster over the last few years. Now, look, this coincides with maybe his phasing out of the team as well. But the style of play is probably quite similar to Leinster's. Talking of Gloucester, Leinster's changed a bit in the last couple of seasons. When Leinster used to be maybe 3 or so seasons, that style of play with a bit of control as well. I think that last year Gloucester got a bit of a reputation trying to attack from all areas of the pitch. So it's interesting again how he feels maybe things have started to change. As I said, it coincides with him maybe being less influential in the team, but you do wonder again, and I hope it goes well for Gloucester. And again, having worked there previously, and I know George Skivington, the coach, and a few of the backroom staff there, Jack Pattinson and a few others again who are excellent young coaches. I hope he goes well. I really do, and I wish him the very best of luck. But you wonder again, if he hadn't signed for Gloucester and Stuart Lancaster was in situ in Connacht, might he have moved west? Was there something about Lancaster's style of play that maybe he would have really liked to see? And look, I don't know. But as I said, look, an interesting piece with a figure again that maybe didn't get the love that possibly he deserves.
Well, he kind of suffered a bit from the David Moyes stuff as well, because he was in after the man, and like you're on a bit of a hiding to nothing.
That's a curse.
That's one of it. What's really nice in the article as well is his experience of the club and what he stepped into. It really it feels like, you know, he's found a space that he's going to really flourish in and enjoy. Like the culture of the club and everything is actually quite engaging and quite striking. So yeah, it'd be great to see him do really well and go from here. And speaking of Leinster, great to see them bounce back and put in a performance yesterday. As the first week was a tough call on them. So I think their priority yesterday was put in a performance and make a bit of a statement for themselves coming back from South Africa to get the season off to a start they can at least build on from here.
They were very unlucky, I think, not to get the second bonus point, to be fair. I think they played, and again, you know, you touched on the Ollie Campbell piece earlier, and his battle with Ward mirroring that of Sexton and Rog, and now Crowley and Prendergast. And I think both we have to remind ourselves that we're so lucky to have two phenomenal talents. And yesterday was a great example of actually how they both played. Neither were perfect. You know, there were moments in the game that I'm sure they wish they'd like to run back, but we've got two exceptional 10s. That's a really good place to be in. We should have that competition. And we should be careful. Point. And I know it maybe touched on some of the stuff we spoke earlier about, but you'd be conscious again about how it all boils over sometimes. Sorry, sometimes, a lot of the time.
That drop goal, by the way, was a thing of beauty at the end.
Exceptional. Exceptional.
But under that pressure, again, no more than we talked about the Rory moment, but like there's expectation on you, conditions the way they were, ball comes back at you, not in the perfect spot, and just like not a problem. It's
kind of going forward, and then he was going backwards, and then still. Listen.
Yeah, no, lovely. It's. You mentioned the Ollie Campbell piece that I mentioned earlier. They compare it here in the Mail on Sunday to the Rugby Saipan with the Ward and Campbell challenge. So it's really interesting. Like Ollie's one of the gentlemen of the game for sure. So it's really interesting to get his experience of that journey.
2 debuts done. Very good. Thank you, Sue. Thanks a million. Enjoyed that. That is the Sunday Paper Review in the books.
The Sunday Paper Review
on Off the Ball.